Welcome to The Real Look.
I'm Bruce Hardy.
And I'm Chase Williams.
I'm so excited to introduce this episode's Northern Lights guest, Andrew L. Anderson, author, speaker, master teacher trainer, and certified life transformation and business productivity coach. Andrew has coached some of the country's top leaders and coaches and helped hundreds of clients break through their limiting beliefs, transform their lives and businesses, and find lasting freedom. Andrew has his own comeback story, which we're excited to dive into, where he found himself living in his parents' basement 10 years ago, thinking he'd lost it all, his marriage, his family, and his career. See how he turned it all around and then some. Please enjoy this conversation with Andrew L. Anderson. Well, g'day, Andrew. Welcome to The Real Look. Where does today's podcast find you?
In beautiful Boise, Idaho.
Okay, Boise, Idaho. Well, we all have a journey. We all have a story prior to real estate. So what were you doing?
Yeah, well, we can go 10 years ago, 2013. I found myself living in my parents' basement. Now, I wasn't 18 years old because that would make sense. I was 28 years old. And me and my wife and our two little girls had just moved back to Boise. We'd been down in Utah for 4 years, and I was teaching. I had just completed my master's degree in education, and I was at the top of my game. Life was beautiful, and we had just actually welcomed a baby girl, number 3, into our family. And getting the master's and moving and being at a new school and having the baby all happened within the same month. And in that same month, my wife also said that she wanted to separate. And that separation led to me not being able to teach anymore due to the circumstances of the situation. It found me not able to be with my beautiful little girls on a day-to-day basis. And it found me living in my parents' basement, believing that I had failed them and I had failed God. And that was my dark, dark night of the soul.
How do you pull yourself out of that?
You join Keller Williams.
Okay, so that's what happened in October 10 years ago?
That's what happened. My brother came to me and he thought that it would be a really great idea at the lowest of lows of my life for me to get a 100% commission-based job where you don't make money for 7 months and you pretend like you have all the confidence in the world. And that's how I was introduced to Keller Williams.
Here you are in a challenging time. You joined this full 100% commission sales-based industry at Keller Williams. And what happened next?
Well, I found myself crying a lot. One of those days, I was literally on the bed in my parents' basement, and I picked up Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl. This career change, and Keller Williams introduced me to all things personal growth, development, and coaching. I just started inhaling everything I could get. And Viktor Frankl was a Nazi concentration camp survivor. And he wrote this book during the 3 years that he was imprisoned, and he penned it in 9 days. And I was holding this book, sitting on my bed in my parents' basement, literally in tears, and I read the words, "There were always choices to make. Every day, every hour, offered the opportunity to make a decision. A decision which determined whether you would or would not submit to those powers which threaten to rob you of your very self, your inner freedom, which determined whether or not you would become the plaything of circumstance, renouncing freedom and dignity to become molded into the form of the typical inmate." So Chase, I made a decision that I wanted to be free, and I didn't want to be an inmate living in my parents' basement anymore.
So what did you do? You made the decision, and then what happened?
I just did everything that people told me to do. I met with as many mentors and leaders, and I took every class, and I knocked on every door, and I did the bold stuff, and it started to build this confidence within me. And after doing this for about 6 months, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm doing it. My wife and I had come back together for a little bit, and it was Easter, literally, Easter morning. This beautiful, redemptive, celebratory Sunday, that she handed me that stack of papers and said, I want to get divorced. And now all the stuff that I had been learning came to mean something. And I really had to decide for a second time what I was going to do. And I just kept doing all the things that I'd been doing for the last 6 months without my wife and this family as I thought it would be forever.
And so you were having some success then on the early days as a real estate agent, Andrew. And then where did that lead you in the business?
I think I took about 16 listings and 8 buyers my first year, and I hated it. I sat in Stacy State's office and I cried. I cried a lot that year, but I was literally in tears. And I told her, I said, listen, I don't care about houses. I could live in a cardboard box, just not my parents' basement. I said, buyers and sellers kind of drive me crazy, and real estate agents are kind of annoying, and I don't want to do this anymore. And she listened, and she was so kind. And the next morning, 7 a.m., she called me and offered me a position. And she said, I'm making up a job for you. If this works, we'll be on stage at family reunion. If it doesn't, you'll have to find another job. So that was the next great thing that happened in this journey that I have been through.
And what was that job?
The title was Implementation Coach. And it was a kind of like a behind the scenes pseudo, let's retain all the agents to our office as we can, but we won't make it seem like it's productivity coaching. You're just going to go love on people and plug them in. I just called all the agents and said, hey, can I talk to you about what's going on in your business and see if there's some things that KW has to offer that maybe you're not using that can help you grow your business. And I would just meet with as many as I could, and I loved on them. And I worked hand in hand with 2 of the other productivity coaches in the office. And after a year, one of those went back into production and the other one was fired. And so Stacy said, you're the productivity coach. And that was an awesome opportunity, and I welcomed it. I was very grateful.
So here you are with this opportunity. I love that you use that word of getting real estate agents connected to the value proposition at Keller Williams ultimately, and then moving into this idea of helping them be more productive by doing those same things. What did you learn about the skill necessary for influencing people through coaching during that part of your story?
I learned that I had been doing it in the 6 years previous to real estate with teenagers in the classroom, and that every adult that I sat in front of was a teenager that was pretending not to be. They had the same insecurities. They went to the same proms. We just call it, like realtor prom now, right? I just realized that everybody's just a big kid in an adult body. And I was able to just listen and learn and love. And that's how I grew as a coach. I didn't know I was coaching. That's what it was.
As you were coaching those people, were you seeing any patterns, any commonalities as you were having these conversations around their own personal productivity?
Yes. No one had a database. No one was using a database. I was like, this is so easy. I would read to them, and then I memorized right out of the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book. I'd say, Gary says, quote, your database is your business, period. The number of names in it and the relationships with those names is what building a real estate business is all about. So I would just show them that, and I'd say, well, can I teach you how to start there, how to build relationships?
What happened with that program ultimately, Andrew, after you took on that opportunity?
This was awesome. Coaching was free in Boise at the time. And I went to family reunion literally within the first few weeks of being the new productivity coach. And I came back and I told Erica and Stacy, hey, I don't want to be on salary anymore. I would like to move to a paid model. I'm going to get all these people that I've been coaching for free to pay me, and I'm going to make more money, and they'll have skin in the game, and we'll start seeing productivity actually go up. So we did it. We launched a paid coaching program, which had never happened there. And in the matter of about 2.5 years, we had 116 agents in coaching. There were 4 of us coaches, and we kind of became like the leader in the field of productivity coaching for all of Keller Williams.
That's outstanding. So what would you say was the reason for the success of that?
Well, we had incredible alignment between our OP, Erica, Stacy, who was the TL at the time, and then me, and everybody was on board. And we just had this awesome cohesion, and we worked hand in hand. We had the same vision, and they gave me all the resources that I needed. And I just did everything I could to build the brokerage. And we were coaching people that weren't KW agents, and they were getting recruited into the brokerage. And we went all hands on deck. It was awesome.
With that being said, though, was there a difference did you find in the coaching clients, right, between those that were getting it for free versus those that were paying to play?
Yeah, because they don't cancel appointments when they're paying for it. right? They don't not show up for group coaching when they're sitting down face to face with me and I tell them, hey, you can be exited from this program, then they don't want to miss out on that because they're seeing everyone that's capping. We kept the thermometer in our training room of the cappers. We saw everybody's numbers and they knew that if you wanted to succeed, then this is what you did. We even got to the point where they had to sign something if they didn't want to be in the program, which was really cool.
Right.
People that finally make the decision to invest in themselves, both from a financial standpoint and a showing up and doing the work standpoint, it would make sense, stand to reason that you can get different results.
Absolutely. In NLP, so I'm a master practitioner of neuro-linguistic programming, which is just a fancy way of saying the science of success. In NLP, we say in order to get outcomes that are different than we currently have, we have to go through ordeals that we've never been through before. And if one of those ordeals is paying for coaching, then let's do it. That's the way nature works. There's always going to be a breakdown. Something has to break. And if it's the piggy bank, so be it, before we can experience the breakthrough.
What happened to the evolution of your business as you went down this road? Like you said, you did that for a number of years doing productivity coaching, but that evolved.
It did. What I realized was the things that I loved most, what I really truly had in my zone of genius was not the business models. I mean, we can reproduce those all day long. It wasn't Gary's quoted book that I could give verbatim. It was what was happening internally with my agents. It was a deeper transformational work. And then I learned that MAPS at the time had that transformational coaching program. And I met Ron Podolsky and I learned about everything that Diana Kokoska was doing. And I became a transformational coach. And I kept running my coaching team in Boise. And I just had my other agents that had grown into coaches run that while I was coaching clients at MAPS. And that took my coaching and learning just through the roof for what I was able to do for people.
Now, a brief word from our sponsors. Stick around.
Keller Williams Luxury Agents. There's an incredible opportunity waiting for you to elevate and grow your business with KW Luxury Pro. KW Luxury Pro offers earned-in luxury agents the opportunity to elevate your business and secure more referrals by focusing on 3 pillars. 1, the network. Our exclusive relationship and referrals directory connects you with fellow luxury agents around the country for more luxury referral opportunities. 2, the knowledge. Our monthly speaker series brings celebrated business authors, inspiring international speakers, and thought leaders directly to you. Our monthly connection and collaboration series offers the opportunity to learn best practices from fellow Luxury Pro members teaching the playbooks from their own businesses. And 3, the experiences. Our members enjoy unique experiences that go beyond the ordinary. Whether it's touring a $48 million estate with your fellow pro members or going behind the scenes at the Four Seasons private residences, you'll have an experience like no other. Join Keller Williams Luxury Pro today to learn how our members are building meaningful connections, sharing business referrals, and expanding their knowledge in a supportive and collaborative community. For more information, please visit kwluxurypro.com.
I think a lot of our listeners don't truly understand what transformational coaching is.
Yeah.
What does that actually mean?
Well, Gary Keller always talks about counterbalance. He teaches it in The One Thing better than anywhere I've ever read. And it's this idea that we have to be all in at work and all in at life, and we can't be all in at both at the same time. So we have to counterbalance. And when an agent comes to me because their business is breaking, I look holistically at their entire wheel of life, every single aspect. And if their business is breaking, there's usually something else breaking too. And it makes sense that we would just try to pour into the business and get that business to change. But what I found was if we could help take care of whatever it is that was breaking in their life as well, whether it was their relationship, their family, their fitness, or their faith, if we could get that put back together, then as Gary says, then the whole world falls into place, that their business really would grow to the extent that they personally were growing. So it's really honing in on what's happening inside the agent, not outside in their business.
So Andrew, tell us what your business looks like today.
So I will always keep my license, and it is at Keller Williams. And I use that for my own investment purposes. And when my parents or siblings just twist my arm and ask me to do real estate for them. But I coach agents at different brokerages. I coach people outside of real estate. At the beginning of this year, I had 47 people that I was working with. We had baby number 7 on the way. I had just launched my book, Strength of the Oak, Strength of the Willow, which became a #1 international bestseller overnight on Amazon. And I had a retreat with 35 people up at Tamarack Lodge outside of McCall. I was with my assistant. We were driving in the car, and I said, "Hey, will you just start counting how many clients I have?" And she said, "You've got 46, 47. I said, "Okay, I think next year at this time, I'd like to have 20. And I was maxed out. I wasn't working more than 40 hours a week, but I was doing more than I could if I wanted to continue to grow myself and my business and my family. We started getting clarity on who I was going to coach. We then have taken that list in about 6-7 months down to 27. And now I get to speak. I get to do podcasts. I get to do events where I get to sign my book. And then I'm growing a coaching team again. And I'm allowing all these people that I'm not able to work with because of my time constraints to get the help they need through other coaches.
Love that. That's a big decision, Andrew. I mean, you make it sound so simple, and yet it's not for everyone. And we see this as a common challenge, especially in this industry, right? You find people that do the work and they're actually pretty naturally gifted at it. And pretty soon they have an amount of business that's literally overwhelming or crushing them. And it leads them to areas that they never really saw themselves going. So as you went through that transformation, if you will, that thought process, when you were just kind of maxed to the point you didn't want to be, how did you go through that thinking process in such a way that led you to get into so much action around it?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. But before I do, Chase, I want you to know that just because my words come out when I'm speaking or in my book as if I have it all together, I don't. Full transparency, most of the time, I don't have a clue what I'm doing. And I'm usually kind of freaked out. And my wife looks at me and she's like, she wants to know, what are you doing? I am scared sometimes. I know I act like I have a lot of confidence, but there are moments of doubt. And there are moments where I have to eat every single word that I put on the page or onto the microphone or into the crowd. And so for me, what it looks like, Chase, is surrounding myself with others that I believe God puts on my path to help me see things that I can't see. They're called coaches, right? And I have 3 coaches right now that I work with. And then I ask my older siblings and my wife and my next door neighbor and my best friend, hey, listen, I'm going to run really fast for the rest of my life, and I'm going to fall and make a lot of mistakes, and I may hurt people along the way. If you see me doing that, will you please let me know? Because I may not be aware of it myself. So Chase, it's not pretty, and it's a lot of failure, and it's a lot of hard work, and there are moments where I still cry myself to sleep.
It's worth noting, right, that you're allowing these people permission in your life to support you on that journey, right? Even if that means getting called out or being made aware of something that otherwise you wouldn't be. And of course, Gary Keller himself says that as adults, maybe teenagers pretending to be adults, like you said, we actually have to grant people permission to do that for us. And that's one of the keys to ultimately moving toward your full potential, right? And there's nothing easy about that.
You're right on. And to answer the question that you asked before I answered the question you didn't ask, what was my thinking that got me there? Well, we know that when we're not having fun anymore or things are falling through the cracks, that it's time to leverage. That's very clear in the MREA. And so what I recognized was there were things falling through the cracks that I wasn't aware of, and that was helping more people. I could not do any more one-on-one. And the one-to-one impact was not going to be able to do what the one-to-many could do. Like when I was down there in Spokane with you, Chase, and speaking to your agents, I wouldn't have been able to do that coaching 47 people. I wouldn't have been able to be on 57 podcasts in a 6-month period. I wouldn't be able to travel and, do the things that I'm doing. So I recognized what would be falling through the cracks if I continued doing what I was doing. And it wasn't as fun as I was telling myself that it was, just so I could keep doing it.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point. This idea of actually shrinking it down almost, right? Getting smaller in order to go bigger. Gary talks about it too. If you want a really big life, then go small. And what he means by that is you master the few things in life that really matter, that allow you to go grow your business. And the idea, most people wouldn't think, well, gosh, I've got 47 clients. I want to cut it down to 20. That would actually be a good thing in order to go and grow your career, which obviously the coaching is just one part of it. If your goal is indeed to impact a lot of people, there are a lot of different channels, which you're obviously taking advantage of now.
Exactly. And I just finished this last weekend listening to Dan Sullivan and Benjamin Hardy. They wrote 10X is easier than 2X. And the subtitle says it all: how world-class entrepreneurs achieve more by doing less. And it really is when we get into that zone of genius, when we're using our unique gifts and talents that no one else could, and we're serving someone that no one else can, then there will be less that we're doing. And we'll focus on the 20%, and we will leverage every single aspect of that 80% so that we can truly maximize our impact.
Love that. So where do you go next, Andrew? Like, as you think about this shrinking down process, or focusing rather, is what I hear you saying, process, and then being able to impact more people actually by doing that. What's next for you? What's next for your part of the journey?
3 things. We'll go big picture first, okay? When I die, I know, I heard Gary say it from his very mouth on stage, that when he dies, he wants his tombstone to say realtor. That's not what I want mine to say. I don't want it to say that. I don't want it to say coach. I don't want it to say author. I don't want it to say anything. If there is one legacy that I leave behind besides the relationships and the family, it would be this nonprofit that I'm currently founding. It's providing coaching to young adults. It's allowing them to have the mindset and the skill set. And I know that KW is doing incredible things with the QL kids, and there's more. We can't do enough of it. And I want to grow something as big as I possibly can with as many people to help these 18 to 25-year-olds not have to go through all the baggage that they go through to get to their 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, and then have to work with me and clean it all up.
I think, one, Andrew, I'm excited that you're on this call with us on this podcast because, a lot of us can't see the forest for the trees, right? Our audience here are realtors, and we're in it day in, day out, right? You have the benefit of perspective as somebody who's gotten to talk with literally hundreds of realtors. And if you were getting back into real estate, if we go back 10 years, right, as you're sitting in that basement, knowing what you know today, what advice would you give your younger self?
That's beautiful. I actually wrote this book to my younger self, Strength of the Oak, Strength of the Willow. And I was coaching 2 25-year-old young men at the time. My number one piece of advice that I would give them is chapter 1. It's called Grounded, ironically, and it starts with me in my parents' basement. But the number one piece of advice I would give to that new career person that's entrepreneuring my way into the world and going through hell at the same time is identify your purpose, your life mission, and grow your roots as deep and as strongly as you can to that one thing, and then never forget it. And as long as you're doing that, you'll be fine.
It's awesome. Well, Andrew, this has been a real treat for us, and I know for our listeners as well. We'll have your contact information and links to your books in the show notes. One of the things I love about this company is, our tagline is where entrepreneurs thrive.
Yeah.
And you're a great example of that, of somebody who's found their, in your words, genius zone, right, to go and do what you want to do. And that's something that you love. So I want to say congratulations to that. And thank you. Thank you again for taking the time to be with us
You're
today.
so very welcome. Thank you. Speed of the leader, speed of the pack. You guys are awesome. And I know that you're giving a lot as well. So I appreciate what you're doing.
Appreciate you, Andrew. Hang tight. We'll be right back.
Climbing interest rates mean less homeowners moving and more uncertainty. You may be looking for a new value proposition. What if you could become the visionary for any staging, design, or renovation need? Style to Design is a staging and design platform, and we invented reality staging and reality renovations. Build your value proposition with access to 1,500 plus design boards, reality tools, customized marketing content, and lead generation website pages. Learn more at styletodesign.com.
Well, Chase, that was a different take for us, right? I mean, normally we're getting into the weeds around the tactics. And, this conversation with Andrew was much more about mindset.
What a unique story, Bruce, and certainly a busy and big 10 years for Andrew. A lot has happened in that period of time, from being, in his parents' basement to now the business and the nonprofit and the things he's doing and creating, the book that he wrote, et cetera. And it feels a little bit like a whirlwind. And some of the advice that Andrew gave was when he finally made a decision, right, as he put it, to choose freedom and go forward. I think it was fortuitous that he was in a place like Keller Williams. And what I mean by that is just the environment that is personal growth and development. If you're deciding to pursue that in life and you put yourself in the right environment, then a lot can happen in a short period of time, which is kind of what happened with Andrew.
And again, at the risk of being repetitious, who you're in business with really does matter. He was fortunate to get into business with Stacey States and Erica Hill, two people who care a lot about their people. I love this fact that, we can be entrepreneurial. Not everybody's cut out to be a realtor. Right? Not everybody's cut out to go on listing presentations or to jump in cars with buyers and go sell houses. And yet what this industry offers is just a plethora of opportunity around other things that you can do in concert with it. And you can tell, Andrew got his master's degree, he's teaching high school, and then gets into real estate, and he didn't stop becoming a student himself.
Right.
He's gone and he got certified in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, as well as a bunch of other things. And you can see that he just loves to share.
Absolutely. And you can also see that he's authentic around the challenges that you face when you pursue a journey like that. And just open about the fact that sometimes it's messy and sometimes you're scared and sometimes you need people to call you out for saying dumb stuff. That's me, right? I can relate to that. Thank God for you and Marissa and everyone else. But he said something that's really instructive. Something has to break before you can experience breakthrough. And I think a lot of times we're wanting to avoid that part of it. And that's actually the important, necessary part that catapults us into something different or better. When I asked him how he decided to go from 47 clients and all the busyness that he had, which, might sound really great if you're into this idea of just building a big business and shrinking down his client list so he could do other things. He shared that when you're not having fun anymore and or things are slipping through the cracks, then it's time to make a change. And it could be time to find some leverage. And there's different forms of leverage, right? It's not always just hiring a person. Sometimes it's shrinking down the number of clients to be intentional about who you're helping, moving from only one-to-one, which is the way he was coaching before, to one-to-many, right? Writing a book, teaching and speaking, etc. And I thought those were a couple of really eye-opening points of the story that you realize are actually a really important part of his journey and the rest of us that are in pursuit of something like that.
And what was going through my mind during that conversation was this personal perspective that we call accountability versus victimish, right? Life happens, right? Life shows up. And, when he was quoting out of Viktor Frankl's book, life happened to Viktor. He had no control over that. What he did have control over was what he did about it. In his case, it was really about his mindset and protecting that. And I think that the same thing happens, right? We all have those dark periods in our life where it feels like, the world is conspiring against us. And we could go down that spirally rabbit hole, which leads us to victimish. And that path, by the way, the status quo, whatever's happening to you will happen to you. It won't change, right? The status quo remains. Versus taking the path of accountability, right? Which is one, acknowledging the reality. Okay, this is what's going on. And now it's the path to finding solutions, owning the problem, taking action, and then ultimately getting on with it to overcome it. I heard that just resonate through everything he had to say.
Yeah, you can tell, obviously, too, it's taken maybe a little bit of time, but he's in touch with his life mission and what's important to him, which is, by the way, the advice that he offered through the book in chapter 1 to his younger self, right? Get in touch with your life mission and never forget what it is. And you can see him doing exactly that with who he's serving and now the nonprofit that he's forming to coach and teach young adults and the passion he has around that, which has probably never left him from when he was teaching before, just in a different industry. I think it's also a testament, Bruce, to, like as he mentioned, you can be anywhere you want in 5 years. And he heard Gary say that, and at first he didn't believe it. Then, of course, now he's done that twice in 10. So it's a good reminder to anyone, if you're not where you want to be yet, you could just be a few short years away from it should you decide to take action.
Well, one of the gifts of this podcast that we get to do, Chase, it causes us to go out and find people to have conversations with. What I'm realizing is inspiration is everywhere. Next week's Northern Lights guest is Aaron B. Thompson with Keller Williams Bothell in Bothell, Washington. We'll see you next week on The Real Look. This podcast is produced by Marissa Frost. Visit KWNWR.com to access the show notes from today's episode. Head over to Apple, Google, or Spotify, or really any major streaming platform to subscribe, and don't forget to leave us a review. Thanks again for listening to The Real Look.